we have a special treat this morning before we come to order. The Senate will come to order. Mr. Majors, would you please call the roll?
Senators Aguilar, Baumgartner, Carroll, Cook, Crowder, Donovan, Garcia, Grantham, Guzman, Heath, Hill, Hodge, Holbert, John, Johnston, Jones, Kefales, Kerr, Lambert, Lundberg, Marble, Martinez-Humanic, Merrifield, Neville, Newell, Roberts, Scheffel, Scott, Sonnenberg, Stedman, Tate, Todd, Ulibarri, Woods. Mr. President.
Here. With 35 present, 0 absent, 0 excused, we have a quorum. Colleagues and guests, would you please stand as we have Senator Sonnenberg lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Mr. President. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Senator Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the reading of the journal for Tuesday, March 29th, that it be dispensed with and the journal be approved as corrected by the Secretary.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted and the journal is approved. Committee reports.
March 29, 2016, Committee on Local Government. After consideration, the Mayor's Committee recommends the following: House Bill 1088 be amended as follows and also amended before the Committee of the Whole favorable recommendation. March 29, 2016, Committee on Local Government. After consideration, the Mayor's Committee recommends the following: Senate Bill 168 be amended as follows and also amended before the Committee of the Whole favorable recommendation, with the recommendation to be placed on the consent calendar. March 29, 2016, Committee on Local Government. After consideration, the Mayor's Committee recommends the following: Senate Bill 171 be referred to the Committee of the Whole favorable recommendation, with the recommendation to be placed on the consent calendar. March 29, 2016, Mr. President, the Committee on Finance has had under consideration at a hearing on the following appointments, recommends the appointments be placed on the consent calendar and confirmed. Members of the Financial Services Board for terms expiring July 1st, 2019. Rainey Lorraine Leotoan of Denver, Colorado, serves as an executive officer of a state credit union and as a Democrat reappointed. Gerald Allen Agnes of Boulder, Colorado, serves as an executive officer of a state credit union and as a Republican appointed. March 29, 2016, Mr. President, the Committee on Finance has had under consideration has had a hearing on the following appointment and recommends the appointment be placed on the consent calendar and confirmed. Member of the Public Employees Retirement Benefit Plans for a term expiring July 10, 2016. Roger P. Johnson of Denver, Colorado, serves as a representative with experience and competence in investment management, finance, banking, economics, accounting, pension administration, or actuarial analysis, and as a Republican, and occasioned by the resignation of Benjamin H. Willer Kaplan of Denver, Colorado, appointed. March 29, 2016, Committee on Finance, after consideration, the Mayor's Committee recommends the following: Senate Bill 165 before the Committee of the Whole favorable recommendation, with the recommendation to be placed on the consent calendar. March 29, 2016, Committee on Finance, after consideration, the Mayor's Committee recommends the following: Senate Bill 75 be postponed indefinitely. March 29, 2016, Committee on Transportation. After consideration, the Mayor's Committee recommends the following: House Bill 1060 before the Committee of the Whole favorable recommendation, with the recommendation to be placed on the consent calendar. March 29, 2016, Committee on Finance. After consideration, the Mayor's Committee recommends the following: Senate Bill 166 be amended as follows and also amended before the Committee of the Whole favorable recommendation, with the recommendation to be placed on the consent calendar. March 29, 2016, Committee on Business, Labor, and Technology. After consideration, the Mayor's Committee recommends the following: House Bill 1306 be amended as follows and as so amended before the Committee of the Whole favorable recommendation, with the recommendation to be placed on the consent calendar. March 29, 2016, Committee on Business, Labor, and Technology. After consideration, the Mayor's Committee recommends the following: House Bill 1323 before the Committee of the Whole favorable recommendation, with the recommendation to be placed on the consent calendar.
Senate Services.
March 30th, 2016, correctly printed, Senate Bill 176, correctly gross, Senate Bill 137, Senate Joint Resolution 20, correctly reading gross, Senate Bill 157, correctly revised, House Bills 1100, 1173, 1183, 1198, 1255, 1258, 1259, and 1316, correctly revised, House Bills 1169, 1187, 1231, 1269, and 1297, correctly enrolled, Senate Bills 13, 51, 68, 99, 110, 122, and 125.
Third reading of bills, consent calendar. Mr. Majors, would you please read the titles of the bills on the third reading of bills consent calendar?
Senate Bill 137 by Senators Johnston and Sonnenberg and Representative Dorr concerning clarification of the authority of the Parks and Wildlife Commission to enter into an agreement with a private landowner. House Bill 1258 by Representative Melton and Senator Lundberg concerning the posting by court clerks of process when a respondent is served by publication. House Bill 1259 by Representatives Mitch Bush and Wilson and Senators Cook and Donovan concerning local district junior colleges in connection with changing the term local district junior college to local district college.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This time I move that the Senate adopt the bills listed on the third reading of bills for final passage consent calendar, which includes Senate Bill 137, House Bill 1258, and House Bill 1259.
Is there further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of the three bills on the third reading of bills consent calendar. Are there any no votes on any of the bills? With 35 ayes, 0 no, 0 absent, 0 excused, Senate Bill 137 is adopted. Co-sponsors: Senator Woods, Senator Scott, Senator Donovan, Senator Holbert, Senator Crowder, Senator Carroll, Senator Heath, Senator Merrifield, Senator Roberts, Senator Kafalis, Senator Todd, Senator Baumgardner, with 35 ayes, 0 no, 0 absent, 0 excused, House Bill 1258 is adopted. Co-sponsors: Senator Woods, with 35 ayes, 0 no, 0 absent, 0 excused, House Bill 1259 is adopted. Co-sponsors: Senator Woods, Senator Todd, Senator Merrifield, Senator Johnston, Senator Newell, Senator Heath, third reading of bills, final passage. Mr. Majors, would you please read the title to House Bill 1173?
House Bill 1173 by Representative Mitch Bush and Senator Scott concerning the continuation of the regulation of vessels by the Department of Natural Resources.
Senator Scott.
Mr. President, thank you. I move House Bill 1173 on third reading and final passage.
You have heard the motion. Is there further discussion? Are there any no votes? Senator Baumgardner, Senator Woods, Senator Neville, Senator Tate, Senator Marble, Senator Lambert, with 29 ayes, 6 no, 0 absent, 0 excused, House Bill 1173 is adopted. Co-sponsors: Senator Jones, Senator Newell, Mr. Majors, would you please read the title to House Bill 1316?
House Bill 1316 by Representative Rosenthal and Senator Cook, concerning the procedures for changing venue for proceedings relating to a child placed in the legal custody of a county Department of Social or Human Services.
Senator Cook.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1316 on third reading and final passage and ask for an aye vote.
Is there further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of House Bill 1316. Are there any no votes? With 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, House Bill 1316 is adopted. Co-sponsors: Senator Woods, Senator Kafalis, Senator Martinez-Humenick, Senator Newell, Senator Todd, Senator Tate, Senator Merrifield, Senator Stedman, Senator Lambert, Senator John, Senator Heath, Mr. Majors, would you please read the title to House Bill 1255?
House Bill 1255 by Representatives Corbin, Vehil, and Senator Baumgartner, concerning additional methods to manage forests to secure favorable conditions for water supply.
Senator Baumgartner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1255 on third reading and final passage and ask for an aye vote.
Is there further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of House Bill 1255. Are there any no votes? With 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, House Bill 1255 is adopted. Co-sponsors: Mr. Majority Leader, Senator Sonnenberg, Senator Lundberg, Senator Lambert, Senator Jones, Senator Cook, Senator Scott, Senator Crowder, Senator Roberts, Senator Neville, Senator Grantham, Senator Woods, Senator Marble, Mr. Majors, would you please read the title to House Bill 1100?
House Bill 1100 by Representatives Pedersen and Asgar, Senator Cook, concerning the ability of unaccompanied homeless youth to determine domicile for purposes of in-state tuition status at institutions of higher education.
Senator Cook.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1100 on third reading and final passage and ask for an aye vote.
Is there further discussion? Senator Newell.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to rise in gratitude for the sponsor bringing this bill forward. This is a real important issue as we have seen an influx of youth becoming homeless. And in fact, it's grown substantially, almost 30 some odd percent, and in our state. And one of the issues that also helps with are those who have aged out or emancipated out of foster care, and then they are not also allowed to come back in sometimes into the system. And so I wanted to say thank you, because there is only one statistic worse than an unaccompanied homeless youth, and that is a foster care youth, and in graduation rates. So I just want to say thank you one more time to the senator from Weld County for bringing this forward.
Is there further discussion? Senator Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to explain for for myself voting no. In current statute, we define minor for the purposes of tuition as anyone who has not reached the age of 22. And this bill specifically deals with adults, not minors, not kids, not kiddos, but people who are over 18 and who have not reached the age of 22. I believe that the better solution would be to correct statute and identify those people who have not reached the age 22 as something other than the word minor, but that is why we were referring to unaccompanied minors in this bill. The people that are covered by this bill are not minors, they're adults who do not have a companion.
Is there further discussion? Senator Johnston.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a quick response to that. Having been someone who has sat down with high school seniors who are trying to apply to college who are homeless, the question is that the statute currently requires higher ed institutions, when you apply, to give your parents' location of domicile, which means by current higher ed regulation, these students are ineligible to be able to get in-state tuition absent the higher ed institution's requirement that they show their parents' place of residence. If you are homeless, you do not have that information. That is why, while there may be a different language in the overall statute, right now these students are incapable of being able to get access to universities for in-state tuition because it asks them for their parents' residence, and their parent doesn't have a residence. I think that's why this is a simple solution to a real problem. I'd ask for an aye vote.
Senator Cook.
Thank you, Mr. President. Regarding the word youth, if in the current statute, they refer to the people that are 18 to 21 as children when they want to get in-state tuition if they live with their parents and they live at home. The current statute calls them children. I think the word youth actually fits better.
Is there further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of House Bill 1100. Are there any no votes? Senator Holbert, Senator Sonnenberg, Senator Lambert, Senator Neville, Senator Woods, Senator Marble, Senator Baumgardner. With 28 ayes, 7 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, House Bill 1100 is adopted. Co-sponsors: Minority Leader Guzman, Senator Roberts, Senator Heath, Senator Kafalis, Senator Hill, Senator Donovan, Senator Crowder, Senator Hodge, Senator Todd, Senator John, Senator Aguilar, Senator Carroll, Senator Ulibarri, Senator Garcia, Senator Merrifield, Senator Kerr, Senator Newell, Senator Stedman, Senator Johnston, Senator Jones, Mr. Majors, would you please read the title to House Bill 1198?
House Bill 1198 by Representatives Pabona, Wilson, Senators Tate and Kerr, concerning computer science courses fulfilling certain graduation requirements.
Senator Tate.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1198 on third reading and final passage and ask for an aye vote.
Is there further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of House Bill 1198. Are there any no votes? Senator Baumgardner, Senator Marble, Senator Newell. My bad. Senator Neville. I got to get better glasses. I mean, way better glasses. With 32 ayes, 3 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, House Bill 1198 is adopted. Co-sponsors: Senator Newell, Senator Heath, Senator Carroll, Senator Jones, Senator Ulibarri, Senator Todd, Minority Leader Guzman, Senator Kafalis, Mr. Majors, would you please read the title to House Bill 1183?
House Bill 1183 by Representative Buckner and Senator Crowder concerning allowing changes made to the Federal Child Care and Development Block Grant Reauthorization 2014 to the Colorado Child Care Assistance Program.
Senator Crowder.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1183 for third and final passage and ask for an aye vote.
Is there further discussion? Senator Martinez-Humenick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to add, yesterday I supported the amendment that was added on to align the bill with federal regulation, and I wanted to clarify that that was brought forward by Weld County. Our counties aren't able to distribute funds sometimes, and they have to give them back. So that's why it was brought into alignment with the federal government, but it was brought by a specific county, and I did want that on the record.
Is there further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of House Bill 1183. Are there any no votes? Senator Lambert? Senator Neville? Senator Marble? With 32 ayes, 3 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, House Bill 1183 is adopted. Co-sponsors: Senator Newell, Senator Stedman, Senator Kafalis, Senator Hodge, Senator Todd, Senator Ulibarri, Senator Carroll, Senator Merrifield, Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate lay over the general order second reading of bills calendar to March 31st.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The Senate will lay over the second reading, general order second reading of bills calendar until March 31st. Majority Leader Scheffel.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate lay over the consideration of House amendments to Senate bills calendar to March 31st. You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The Senate will lay over the consideration of House amendments to Senate bills until March 31st. Consideration of governor's appointments consent calendar. Mr. Majors, would you please read the appointments on the consent calendar?
Members of the Colorado Health Facilities Authority Board of Directors, effective June 30th, 2015, for terms expiring June 30th, 2019. Lanny Martin Proffer of Denver, Colorado, Democrat appointed. John Lester Vigil, Pueblo, Colorado, non-affiliated, reappointed. Members of the Board of Trustees for Metropolitan and State University of Denver, for terms expiring December 31st, 2019. Elaine Gaines Berman of Denver, Colorado, serves as Democrat, reappointed. Walter Lewis Eisenberg of Denver, Colorado, serves as Democrat, reappointed.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate confirm the governor's appointments listed on the consideration of governor's appointments consent calendar, which includes members of the Colorado Health Facilities Authority Board of Directors and members of the Board of Trustees of Metropolitan State University of Denver.
You have heard the motion. Is there further discussion on any of the appointments on the consent calendar? Seeing none, are there any no votes on any of the appointments? With 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, Lanny Martin Proffer and John Lester Vigil are appointed as members of the Colorado Health Facilities Authority Board of Directors. With 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, Elaine Gantz Berman and Walter Lewis Eisenberg are appointed as members of the Board of Trustees of Metropolitan State University of Denver. Consideration of governor's appointments. Majority Leader Scheffel.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate lay over the consideration of governor's appointments calendar to March 31st.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The Senate will lay over the consideration of governor's appointments until March 31st. Announcements. Majority Leader Scheffel.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, we are going to take up a bit of tomorrow's second reading calendar on special orders. I have confirmed with leadership on this and prepared to do that. So, Mr. President, I move that the Senate take up a special orders calendar, second reading of bills consent calendar comprised of House Bill 1271, Senate Bill 153, House Bill 1027, House Bill 1262, House Bill 1265, and House Bill 1353. At the hour of 9:45.
The motion is that the Senate take up a special orders calendar as articulated by the Majority Leader. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Having approached the hour of 9:45, the Senate will take up a special orders calendar. We will stand in a brief recess as the calendar gets prepared and distributed. The Senate will be in recess. The Senate will come back to order. Colleagues, in order to save a little paper, instead of printing something that we already have printed in abundance, we are not going to print a special orders calendar. You have it here. It looks just like general orders, second reading of bills calendar, consent calendar for Thursday, March 31st. If there's objection to that, come get a copy and go print more. Or just pick up the thing with the yellow front. The thing with the yellow front, page 3, and follow along in your hymnals. We will follow that order for the special orders calendar, which brings us to special orders. Senator Cook.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for consideration of special order, second reading of bills, consent calendar.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The Senate will resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for the consideration of special orders, second reading of bills, consent calendar. Senator Cook will take the chair.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee will come to order and the coat rule is relaxed. Mr. Majors, would you please read the titles to all the bills on the special order, second reading of bills, consent calendar?
House Bill 1271 by Representative Singer and Norberg and Senators John and Lumberg concerning the ability of a limited winery that has a winery direct shipper's permit to deliver vinous liquors of its own manufactured directly to a personal consumer without the use of a common carrier. Senate Bill 153 by Senator Crowder and Representative Wilson concerning nominees for county court judges. House Bill 1027 by Representative Danielson and Senators Todd and Sonnenberg concerning depositions in criminal cases in which an at-risk person may not be available for trial. House Bill 1262 by Representative Williams and Senator Cook concerning measures to improve peace officer hiring in connection therewith requiring employment waivers as part of the background check process for a person applying for a position as a peace officer who has worked as an officer and giving the post board the authority to deny certification to an applicant who entered into a deferred agreement. House Bill 1265 by Representatives Melton and Nesgar and Senators Johnson and Cook concerning expungement of arrest records based on mistaken identity. House Bill 1353 by Representatives Duran and Del Grosso and Senator Sheffield Guzman concerning payment of expenses of the Legislative Department.
Majority Leader Sheffel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that the committee adopt the special order second reading of bills consent calendar, which includes House Bill 1271, Senate Bill 153, House Bill 1027, House Bill 1262, and its associated Judiciary Committee report, House Bill 1265, and House Bill 1353, and ask for an aye vote.
Is there any discussion? What's that? Oh, Majority Leader Sheffel, a committee report on one.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd move the Associated Committee report, Judiciary Committee report, with House Bill 1262.
Is there any discussion on the Judiciary Committee report? Seeing none, motion for the body is the adoption of the committee report. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it. The committee report is adopted. Is there any further discussion? Motion for the body is the adoption of all the bills on the second reading or on special order second reading of bills consent calendar. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it, and the special orders are adopted. Majority Leader Sheffel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move the committee rise and report.
Motion for the body is to rise and report. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the motion is adopted. The committee will rise and report.
The Senate will come back to order. Senator Cook.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee has met and had a number of bills under consideration. Mr. Majors, would you please read the report?
March 30th, 2016, Mr. President, the Committee of the Whole basic report is under consideration. The following task bills being second reading thereof makes following recommendations thereon. Senate Bill 153 passes on second reading in order to engross to place on the counter for third reading and final passage. House Bill 1271, House Bill 1027, House Bill 1262 is amended, House Bill 1265, and House Bill 1353 passes on second reading in order to revise and place on the counter for third reading and final passage.
Senator Cook.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the adoption of the report.
Is there further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of the report of the Committee of the Whole. Are there any no votes? With 35 ayes, 0 no, 0 absent, 0 excused, the report of the Committee of the Whole is adopted. Senate Bill 153 passed on second reading and ordered engrossed and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. House Bill 1271, House Bill 1027, House Bill 1262 is amended, House Bill 1265, House Bill 1353 passed on second reading and ordered revised and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. So, colleagues, we'll just move into tomorrow's general order, second reading of bills calendar for a bit here, obviously monitoring the time for the committees upon adjournment. What we'll take up will not be, so as the President said, we'll save some paper here, and so just work off your tomorrow's general order, second reading of calendar, which will include all the second reading bills except for the first one, Senate Bill 150. So, Mr. President, I move the Senate take up a general order, second reading of bills special calendar comprised of House Bill 1215, House Bill 1224, House Bill 1263, House Bill 1264, and Senate Bill 160.
The motion is to take up special orders, second reading of bills, as articulated by the Majority Leader, which is tomorrow's general order, second reading of bills calendar, with the exception of Senate Bill 150. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The Senate will take up a special orders calendar. Senator Cook.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for the consideration of special order, second reading of bill special calendar for second reading.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The Senate will resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for the consideration of special orders, second reading of bills. Colleagues, again, we're going to continue from page 3 to page 4 on the daily calendar and not reprint those bill titles. Senator Cook will take the chair.
Gracias.
We're going to move out of order. Are you ready?
I'm ready. The committee will come to order and the Cook rule is relaxed. Mr. Majors, would you please read the title to Senate Bill 1215, or I'm sorry, House Bill 1215.
House Bill 1215 by Representative McCann and Senator Guzman concerning changing the statutory purposes of parole to successfully reintegrate parolees into society by providing enhanced supportive services.
Majority Leader Shuffle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move the committee lay over House Bill 1215 to follow House Bill 1224.
You've heard the motion that House Bill 1215 be laid over till after House Bill 1224. All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it, and House Bill 1215 will be laid over after House Bill 1224. Mr. Majors, would you please read the title of House Bill 1224?
House Bill 1224 by Representative Lundin and Senator Woods concerning child abuse involving human trafficking of minors.
Senator Woods.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1224 on second reading and the associated Judiciary Committee report.
The Judiciary report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the Judicial Committee, we added a small amendment that the counties needed, and then we have an amendment to the committee report as well.
Okay. There is an amendment on the desk. Okay. Yeah, I know. Would you please move the committee report, and then we'll take up the amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do move the Judicial Committee report on House Bill 1224.
Any further discussion on the Judiciary Committee report? Senator Koufalis. Senator Koufalis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would appreciate just a little bit more explanation of what the committee report is.
Senator Woods.
Thank you. The committee report added the language that in instances of third-party abuse or neglect as it relates to human trafficking, a county department of social services may, but is not required to, interview the person alleged to be responsible for the abuse. And then law enforcement had asked us to specifically add this last sentence: if a county department elects to interview the third-party individual, they will confer with local law enforcement first. We're trying to protect the social workers, the DHS workers, from being out with a perpetrator without law enforcement's protection and help.
Any further discussion on the committee report? Seeing none, the motion for the body is the adoption of the committee report. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Ayes have it, and the Judiciary Committee report is adopted. To the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Majors, please read the amendment.
Amendment L013.
Senator Woods.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Amendment 13 was at the request of the chair of the Judiciary Committee, and there was a hanging participle, we decided to call it, in the committee, or may determine a finding. And we wanted to just clarify that. So what we've done with this amendment is referred it right back to the statute where this finding is called for.
Senator Woods, I might have missed it, but could you please move it?
I move Amendment L13.
Thank you. Any further discussion on L13? Senator Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank the bill sponsor for working on the dangling participle. Thank you.
Any further discussion on L13? Seeing none, the motion for the body is the adoption of Amendment L13. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and Amendment L013 is adopted. To the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This bill adds human trafficking to the definitions of child abuse and neglect in dependency and neglect cases. Unfortunately, the law doesn't put it there without this bill, so I ask for your support.
Senator Newell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to rise in support of House Bill 1224 because one of the highest targeted populations of child trafficking are those who are in the child abuse and neglect system. And so these systems, the criminal juvenile justice system, I should say, and the child welfare system need to better interact and better understand. So I think that this will do a really good job of driving best practices in communication back and forth, and then also of getting services to those youth and children who are getting wrapped up in this insidious crime. So I rise in support of House Bill 1224.
Any further discussion on House Bill 1224? Seeing none, the motion for the body is the adoption of House Bill 1224. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and House Bill 1224 is adopted. Mr. Majors, would you please read the title of House Bill 1215?
House Bill 1215 by Representative McCain and Senator Guzman concerning changing the statutory purposes of parole to successfully reintegrate parolees into society by providing enhanced supportive services.
Senator Guzman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1215 on second reading. This is a bill that has been written for the purpose of improving or defining parole. For too many years, parole was looked at as a time where someone had just finished their time and they would be released. We need to have a better statutory definition of what parole means and how someone and what someone must achieve before they are paroled. And this bill was brought to us by, in support of the DA Council, has the support of the Department of Corrections, and also the support of the Public Defender's Office. So I move House Bill 1215 on second reading.
Any further discussion on House Bill 1215? Seeing none, the motion for the body is the adoption of House Bill 1215. All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and House Bill 1215 is adopted. Mr. Majors, would you please read House Bill 1263?
House Bill 1263 by Representative Williams and Senator Ulibarri concerning updates to the statutory prohibition on profiling by police officers.
Senator Ulibarri.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1263 and the Judiciary Committee report.
To the Judiciary Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We added one little word in judiciary, the word solely, to clarify that this allows for the use of demographic information in all points bulletins, but doesn't allow for the practice of profiling.
Any further discussion on House Bill 1263? Seeing none, the motion for the body is the adoption of House Bill 1263. I'm sorry? Oh, I'm sorry. Any further discussion on the committee report? Seeing none, the motion for the body is the adoption of the committee from Judiciary on House Bill 1263. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. No. The ayes have it, and the committee report on 1263 is adopted. To the bill, Senator Ulibarri.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a minor update to the current prohibition we have in law for the practice of profiling in alliance with federal guidelines. So again, colleagues ask for an aye vote on House Bill 1263.
Any further discussion on House Bill 1263? Seeing none, the motion is for the adoption of House Bill 1263. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and House Bill 1263 is adopted. Mr. Majors, would you please read House Bill 1264?
House Bill 1264 by Representative Melton and Senator Johnston concerning prohibiting the use of a chokehold by a peace officer.
Senator Johnston, Majority Leader Scheffel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move the committee lay over House Bill 1264 to follow Senate Bill 160.
The motion for the body is to lay over House Bill 1264 to follow Senate Bill 160. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. And House Bill 1264 will be laid over after reading of Senate Bill 160. Mr. Majors, would you please read the title of Senate Bill 160?
Senate Bill 160 by Senator Lambert concerning clarification of the status of state police power jurisdictions on federally managed lands to address issues that affect the public safety of the residents of the state.
Senator Lambert.
You good? Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Request a senatorial 5.
Committee will stand in recess. Committee will come back to order. Senator Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 160.
To the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, Senate Bill 160 has to do with clarifying jurisdiction on federal lands. The reason that I've been carrying this bill is the fact that we have a crazy quilt of jurisdictional overlap that is never resolved prior to fires starting in Colorado. We have firefighters coming from federal government, from Bureau of Land Management, from U.S. Forest Service, from counties, from cities, showing up on the scene of fire and then deciding to do an MOU to redefine jurisdiction. The result of that is that we have seen in Colorado Springs a huge loss of property, a huge loss of, or unnecessary loss of life. We've lost animals, we've lost people, we've lost ranches, and all for things that I believe could have been planned in advance if we had a place at the table with the federal government to define our jurisdictions better, and especially through our county sheriffs. The Colorado County Sheriffs Association last Friday polled their members, and every county sheriff in the state supports Senate Bill 160. And I ask that you do too. There is no fiscal note on this bill. It is a matter of jurisdictional definition. If you read through the bill, you can see that it's using federal jurisdictional guidelines. It's not making these up. It's all well cited. So I think it will add a lot of clarity, especially for our rural and urban wildlife or urban wildfire interface areas where we have a lot of jurisdictional overlap and confusion. This should clarify things, and as we've seen all the way in progress from the Hayman fire, where there were jurisdictional problems, to the Waldo Canyon fire, where there were jurisdictional problems, to the Black Forest fire, where there were jurisdictional problems. I think this is one step, and the county sheriffs agree this is one step in making our state safer by having a more clearly defined role for our county sheriffs. I'd ask for an aye vote.
Senator Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, I ask for a no vote on this bill. This is in the vein of a long line of public land seizure bills for state and local governments. It's patterned on an ALEC law and law out of Utah. As far as the wildland firefighting issue, the firefighters are opposed to this bill, and the reason is that we clearly define in statute how first responders address fires. And it's a negotiated handoff with federal agency because they have the resources to fight the fires. That's what happened, and I witnessed it on the 4 Mile fire personally, that handoff of calling in a Type 2 and a Type 1 team. And I think this will cause more hazards than benefits. I think it will make it less clear on how handoffs happen in fires. But more broadly, we had a DU law professor in, and he was talking about how this is settled law, how this works. There's a supremacy clause in the U.S. Constitution, and there have been numerous court cases that have defined that. And you know, when we first became a state, we said we give up all rights to these lands. But if you look at the bill closely, and this is supposedly about just fire, if you go to page 8 in the definitions, always read the definitions. There's a lot of stuff that can go in there, and always look out for a notwithstanding, right? Jurisdictional right means the ability of state or political subdivision of the state, this is the important part, a political subdivision of the state as applicable to exercise its lawful police powers over a given land area. Here we define public political subdivision. It means a county, city, town, here we go, service authority, school district, this is about fire, school district on federal lands, local improvement district, law enforcement authority, city or county housing authority. Do they want federal lands for housing? Water, sanitation, fire protection, water, sanitation. We have other bills talking about clarification of water rights and interrelating with the federal government, and we're throwing this in there with it. Metropolitan irrigation, drainage, or other, here it is, other special district or any other kind of municipal, quasi-municipal, or public corporation organized pursuant to law. And I don't know if the sponsor knows the answer to this, but are there economic development commissions that are public corporations organized pursuant to law? Can we do economic development on Forest Service and BLM land with this bill? It creates a lot of confusion. That's my point in the first place. I think it's a bad idea. We've rejected this idea as a legislature 3 times now. I think we should continue doing that, and I ask for a no vote.
Senator Holbert?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In your former role, I think you might have more expertise on this question than any of the other 34 members of this body. Coming from Douglas County, I have had the opportunity to work with my county commissioners and the staff at Douglas County to learn that in the case of a wildfire or other national emergency, my vernacular, the top fire chief in those emergency situations is our county sheriff. He's in charge of that emergency. He is the one that is on the line to make the call to make sure that the residents of Douglas County or your county are safe, that resources are deployed. And that includes out on federal land, but as was mentioned earlier, there might be someone from the federal government there to help. And if there's confusion, it's with the federal government. It's with the time required to develop that memo of understanding. Down in Douglas County, we're proud that we have a helicopter, privately owned, on station in Castle Rock. And we have an example that I think points directly to Senate Bill 160. A fire started on national forest land, and that helicopter pilot, not under the jurisdiction of the federal government, but of our county sheriff, took off, dropped water on that fire, and put it out. Now, he got the water from a private landowner, and our county offers a program to where we will pay for the water that was taken out of his pond that he used to water his cattle, I suppose. And that landowner, that rancher, came back and said, no, you don't need to pay me back. You put the fire out, and you saved my cattle and my land. And we didn't waste time for the federal government to show up and navel gaze and figure out how they were going to deploy resources from out of state or elsewhere. We put the fire out. And I want to express my gratitude to our former Sheriff Dave Weaver and our current Sheriff Tony Spurlock, because they have this right, and I ask for your support for this bill, because the locally elected sheriff has that responsibility, and it's time that this sovereign state step up and make it clear that that locally elected sheriff is the person in command, does have that responsibility to the people who have elected him or her to that position. And to stand there and wait for the federal government to come and put together an MOU and figure out where those resources are going to come from, that just puts life and property at risk. This has no secret agenda, and I applaud, I appreciate the sponsor bringing this bill. It upholds the sovereignty of this state and the ability of our county sheriffs to protect the life and property of the people who elected him or her. Ask for an aye vote.
Senator Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The speaker before last brought up a few accusations about what he thought were safety issues, federal resources, transfers and land seizures. This is just totally a myth. I think we need to talk here about the truth, about protecting lives and protecting property for our state. The first night of the Black Forest Fire, Governor Hickenlooper flew out to El Paso County, met with our local officials on scene. I met with him there at that time. I said, Governor, as we have been for several years, we totally back you up on your role as the chief executive of the state of Colorado. You do what you need to do to fight this fire. We did not need the federal government, which would arrive actually with their Type 1 team 3 or 4 days later. We did not need to wait for the federal government to take action. It was said that, well, gee, we have to wait because we have more federal resources. They could bring more federal resources to bear. Folks, you haven't been paying attention if you think the federal government has been maintaining its resources. We've seen this in state after state after state, in Washington, in California, in Oregon, and especially here in Colorado. The federal government has not been managing its forests. The federal government has not been preparing to fight wildland fires. They have been pulling money from programs from the Department of Agriculture hand over fist, and they have severely cut the Air Force resources with our own tanker fleet to the point, I don't know the exact number, I think it's 12 or 13 aerial tankers now, C-130s in the entire fleet. All of these are being outsourced because the federal government's getting out of this business. You may have remembered that we passed a bill a couple years ago to start our own aerial tanker fleet. California has done the same thing. We did that because we can no longer rely on the federal government for prompt and sustained action to fight fires in our state, which is our sovereign business to do. It was even registered in testimony when we heard this in the committee, that the U.S. Forest Service stopped bulldozers from coming in and putting out the Hayman fire. On the first day that the fire really, smoked up, there were bulldozers available about 1,000 yards away that could have gone in and stomped this fire out immediately. Immediately. And I've talked to the owners of those trucks and said, oh, well, this may not be safe. It may not be safe. Maybe the bulldozer operators don't know how to operate on mountains. Folks, these are D9 and D10 Caterpillars that move rocks out of mines. They're about as big as this room. That's where they play. They play in quarries. They play in mines. They move rocks. And a simple fire trail to stop the spread of, at that time, a very small fire probably would have done the job. Our county sheriff tried to find fire roads that had been on the maps back in the 1950s, but the U.S. Forest Service eliminated all fire roads, so there's no connecting mechanism to get fire trucks into the national forest. There are no barriers. There is no planning for how to fight a fire. It's unfortunate that the wind changed and blew the Waldo Canyon fire into the city of Colorado Springs, but on the other hand, it was a little bit fortunate because if that wind hadn't changed, the Waldo Canyon fire would have swept up the Front Range and would have been in Highlands Ranch and Denver, because there was absolutely nothing. There were no connecting roads whatsoever to stop that fire. And do we trust the federal government to do that planning? Well, I think time after time, it's been demonstrated that they do not plan in advance. We have the blue pine, the pine bark beetle killed trees all over the northern part of the state, above 9,500 feet. And yet, have we done enough, has the federal government done enough to mitigate that? It's just another tinderbox waiting to happen eventually. Yes, we had some discussions about the U.S. Constitution. The Constitution is clear. Article 1, Section 8, Paragraph 17 says that the right to define jurisdiction is exclusively reserved for the states, not for the federal government. Federal government can buy land, but the states have a role in determining jurisdiction on that land. And by the way, the Supremacy Clause is not part of Article 1, Section 8, which gives power to the U.S. Congress. When there's a specific exclusion in Article 1, Section 8 about the powers of the federal government, we need to understand that Supremacy Clause does not trump the rest of the Constitution. It also doesn't trump the 10th Amendment, which gives police powers to the states, which has been confirmed in one Supreme Court case after another. I don't believe that's ever been overturned in the history of our republic. Is defining jurisdiction really going to make us less safe? Well, come down, as I have done, and walk into Waldo Canyon, where you see miles and miles and miles of completely destroyed forest, completely destroyed soil, hydrophobic soil, which will not repair itself for decades, a closed forest where the public is not allowed into it, and ask yourself, gee, are we really protecting our natural resources? Are we really protecting our multi-purpose national forests where everybody should be enjoying these? Unfortunately, there's still problems. I have neighbors whose lives have been destroyed here several years later because the flooding continues off of federal lands into their private property. And guess what, folks? There's nothing they can do about it. Homes have been flooded away. Handicapped people cannot access their own property because the roads have been washed away. So what do they get out of the federal government? Not a dime. Because the federal government stands behind sovereign immunity, it doesn't make any difference if we caused it or not. We are going to stand by sovereign immunity and not be responsible. And this body should remember the case in the Lower North Fork fire when the Colorado Forest Service started that fire, which resulted in the loss of 3 lives. And this body stepped up to the plate and assumed some responsibility. Yes, we could have hidden behind sovereign immunity too. Yeah, well, it's our fault, but you know, that's really not legally convenient. We might have to pay some money. But we didn't do that because we had the integrity to stand up and fix the problem. Nobody has stood up and fixed the problem caused on federal lands by the Hayman Fire, which took the federal government 11 days to respond to with aerial tankers that were less than 50 miles away at Peterson Air Force Base in Colorado Springs. They didn't respond to it. Our local resources responded a lot quicker in the Waldo Canyon fire, in the Black Forest fire, than federal resources did. So there are local solutions, especially in a time when the federal government is simply not serious about helping Western states. They know we have a problem. They're simply not doing anything about it. So it's time to do something about it ourselves. There's also, I welcome you to read the bill. There's absolutely nothing in this bill about land transfers or land seizures or anything else. To say otherwise is just simply a redirection. This is about the authority of our own state, our own county sheriffs to fight fires, fight emergencies, as I've been tried to be very supportive of this administration in Colorado ever since I've been in the Senate. We've done a lot. We've reorganized all of our firefighting forces under DPS. We've reorganized our budget. We've reorganized our cash funds. We've allowed the governor to respond much more quickly than he or she had been able to do in the past. We've made very, very significant reforms, especially since the Lower North Fork fire. But we cannot be bound by a crazy quilt of jurisdictional issues when our state and county and local assets get to the scene and are told, you cannot come into our fire area. If you do, we will have you arrested, because they do not, even under federal law, have that authority. That's why we need Senate Bill 160, so that we have a standard in Colorado that we can train to, that our firefighters, our first responders know what their authority is when they arrive on the scene of a fire. So again, I'd ask for an aye vote.
Senator Merrifield.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, this bill is almost word for word identical to a bill that was killed in the House last year, Senate Bill 39. So what this bill tries to do is to redefine the relationship between the state and federal government about who gets to do what on federally managed public lands like national forest lands and BLM. And it clarifies, in quotes, that state and local governments have jurisdiction to enforce the law on public lands, but that already happens, and there's no controversy about that. Indeed, local sheriffs already can and do enforce laws and provide for public safety on public lands. But this bill goes further and claims other vague police powers over public lands, along with tired and overused talking points complaining about public lands management. But the problem is it could lead to local or state agencies unilaterally bulldozing roads, as we've seen in Utah, permitting logging and other destructive practices. And this bill, speaking of Utah, is based on a Utah State Legislature resolution and a text from ALEC, the Koch-funded right-wing think tank that's on record supporting the seizure of public lands. It's opposite to the Colorado way of...
Senator Merrifield, stick to the bill, please, not bringing up ALEC.
Sorry, Mr. President, I didn't understand what you just said.
I said you don't need to bring up ALEC and the Koch-funded issues. You just stick to the bill, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I thought I was speaking to the bill since I'm referring to the text from which it is taken. Other than that, given that we just experienced in Oregon a really destructive situation at the Mahler Wildlife Preserve where that was taken over by citizens who were trying to assume this specific right, I think we should be more careful about the legislation that we bring. So being, as I said at the beginning of my testimony, that this bill was very similar to one last year that was defeated, I would hope we would not waste our time and defeat it here in the Senate.
Senator Neville.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Wow. I didn't mean that in exactly probably a great way, but wow. Let's get back to what this bill is about. When conditions on such lands adversely affect or pose a clear and imminent danger to life and the public health and safety of the residents of this state. Friends, when you have a wildfire in your district and your residents are calling and asking for help, they want us in this body to make sure that we are doing due diligence now before the time comes. I had the opportunity, some would say, to be involved with Lower North Fork Fire in 2012 when I represented that district in 2012. And let me tell you, friends, when a fire hits and when a disaster hits, the expectation is that people are put into areas of stewardship, actually have a plan. That's not always the case. As my colleague from El Paso County said, in the Hayman fire, there was no stewardship. It wasn't exercised at that time. It was late. It was a dollar late and a day short. Friends, this bill is about making sure that we have the opportunity to plan ahead, and we actually have a plan. It's not about many of the other things that have been brought up. This bill is about exercising the constitutional 10th Amendment rights of the state of Colorado and planning accordingly. I urge an aye vote.
Senator Ulibarri.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the passion for public safety regarding this bill, but I want to clarify that what was just stated and what's being proposed as the impetus for this bill isn't going to potentially be the impact. The Colorado professional firefighters have expressed their opposition to this bill for the concern that it could confuse longstanding and adversely impact longstanding agreements between the state and the U.S. Forest Service, BLM, and other agencies. And especially during a crisis, as was just outlined, you wouldn't want there to be confusion. You'd want there to be clarity and consistency. The reason I stand in opposition to 160 is that this bill could cause dangerous and fatal confusion for wildfire first responders. Yes, the sheriffs agree with this bill. Guess what? Our firefighters do not. And in thinking about, specifically talking about public safety and fire mitigation and fire protection, I would trust those who are empowered with that responsibility, our firefighters and those folks who are going to be responding. You know, it was said before, and there was a gaveling down about this bill, but I just want to clarify that this is the exact text from House Joint Resolution 15 from Utah. It is a model legislation, literally verbatim, word for word. And what's most concerning to me is that it doesn't do the thing that it's being claimed to do. What it does, though, is extend unnamed, undefined police powers to these lands for the state. In an effort, as was already clarified, what's happened in Utah is that it's given the state authority over public lands. Public lands exist for all of us. They exist for us for our benefit, whether it's going to be for us to go hunting or for us to go camping with our families, not for the private purposes of the state. That's why they're called public lands. This is another attempt to seize our public lands and take them away from the people of Colorado, and I'm opposed to Senate Bill 160.
Senator Newell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I wanted to explain that I will be voting no on Senate Bill 160 because I came down here to represent my district as well as the whole state, and I have received only opposition emails and calls on this bill, and I have not received one in support of it. Now, many times we come down here and we hear pros and cons on both sides, and we need to look at our conscience as well as our constituents, of course. But when I get the concerns from my constituents about the one-size-fits-all ideas that are imported from other states and looking at why aren't we doing it the Colorado way, why aren't we doing it the collaborative way, and I would like to hear if there was some kind of a stakeholder process to put this bill together, and if so, were all the appropriate parties there, because maybe something can be worked out to accommodate these concerns. But the concerns I'm getting from my constituents are asking me to make sure that, let's see, this is not how we treat our public lands in Colorado. They are for everyone, not special interests and corporations, that Colorado needs to roll up its sleeves and work collaboratively for the betterment of our public lands, and that we don't need one-size-fits-all ideas imported from other states defining our approach to public lands. So I guess I just want to make sure that my constituents know I'm listening to them and responding to them, but also to hear about the stakeholder process, because that might help us in the future if this were to not pass. Thank you.
Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I come down in support of this measure, and actually in response to some of the questions that have been asked here and statements made, I believe in the proper stakeholder process as well. It was established in 1876 when the people of Colorado put together what we call the General Assembly, comprised of the House and the Senate. And here in the Senate, I have people that I represent in Larimer County. And just a few years ago, we had a rather significant fire that occurred in Larimer County. And I was actually there in person witnessing some of the handoff of authority from the local authorities to the larger entities as this fire grew and grew and grew. And to that extent, that was properly handled. The reason I'm supporting this bill is we need to underscore who is in charge. And when it comes to the county north of Denver and north of Boulder County called Larimer, it's our sheriff who has the initial local authority elected by the people to determine how do you handle this. And of course, there are the local fire districts, and initially, it's a local fire district that has the responsibility to try to put something out. Well, up in Larimer County, a whole lot of that land is federally owned. And what I like about Senate Bill 160 is it still directs everybody back to the authority in charge in that county. And if there is confusion, it's due to this lack of understanding of where the jurisdiction really resides. The federal government, if you go back a couple of more centuries, you'll see that they're given some responsibility, but when it comes to the administration of the laws in the individual states, it's up to the state to determine what that is. And that's why 160 is before us, because we're not beholden to Congress on how things are conducted in the state of Colorado. It's quite the opposite. And this bill underscores that and sets in place that proper procedure so that when there is an emergency, there is no question who you go to first and foremost as to how it's to be conducted. And this notion that the Forest Service has some sort of a veto over we the people here in Colorado, and for my district, Larimer County, that should not exist. There should not be that confusion of who's in charge. It is the sheriff. It is the local authorities. Senate Bill 160 establishes the appropriate level. And as far as the stakeholder group, well, here we are. Let's figure this out. Vote yes on Senate Bill 160.
Senator Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I wasn't really going to come up on this bill, but hearing the conversation, I feel compelled to. You know, I've been getting those emails too, and I would say that whenever an advocacy group wants to gin up their membership, they say there's a land grab underway, and that is, to me, very offensive as someone who lives in this area that is continually at risk. It is the county sheriffs who are first on the scene, who are helping the people who live there to protect not just property but their lives. It's very significant to me that the county sheriffs, and not the professional firefighters, that the county sheriffs support, because they're the ones that are there evacuating the areas that are under siege when that fire is bearing down on people and subdivisions. What's at risk is not just public safety, but it is watershed protection, which we all know, whether you live in rural or urban Colorado, that's incredibly important. To me, every time we try and point out the fact that there is a greater role for the state to play in some of these public safety emergency situations, it gets downplayed as if there's not a problem. Well, if there's not a problem, why do we have a state air fleet? Why do we expend so much of our state budget to protect the people and the property of Colorado from the fires that are occurring on, unfortunately, a very regular basis? Why is it just this year we had a resolution that talks about the federal government inability, unwillingness, lack of political will to fund the U.S. Forest Service so that their budget goes towards forest management and not fire borrowing? This is because we as a state recognize there is a problem. Senate Bill 160 is doing the same darn thing. It is saying that we need people on the ground when the emergency is happening to protect the lives that are at stake. It is not a land grab, and I resent people characterizing it as that when what it is about is public safety. It is public safety in the very essence of looking at the fire bearing down on you. Again, I've told this story here at the microphone. I've lived it. But I sat on the Lower North Fork Wildfire Commission and talked and spent an entire interim with people who lived it. So it's a Front Range issue. I've been up to the High Park Fire, down Waldo Canyon. So if we don't acknowledge that there is a problem, then it is the definition of insanity. I would say that much of what has happened in recent years has been in a positive direction with the U.S. Forest Service, and that is born out of necessity, because the people on the ground know that they don't have the resources. The U.S. Forest Service personnel knows they have to work with local government because they are not given the resources to address this. So we're seeing progress, but it's very dependent on whoever the U.S. Forest Service is in that particular area of the state. Senate Bill 160 puts it right out there that this cooperation is not just a discretionary selective thing, but it is saying that it is critically important for the public safety of the citizens of Colorado that we have the sheriffs enabled to move in quickly. Why would we let a fire grow to a level, if it could be put out early, if it could be dealt with, and many times there's MOUs or IGAs that are worked out between the federal and state government, but why would we take the chance to let a small extinguishable fire go to the point then it is a catastrophic wildfire that can't be caught? So, you know, I am not a member of ALEC. I've never attended an ALEC conference. I think that's a red herring. I can't stand it when that stuff starts coming into these bills. Focus on the bill, what it's intended to do, and it is to protect the people of Colorado.
Senator Jones?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, you know, have you ever heard the term, don't shout fire in a crowded theater? Well, we're shouting fire in the Senate, but we're not reading the bill and the truth of the bill. If you want to go along with me here, I'll help you through that and tell you what this bill does. If you go to Senate page 9, and you go to line 16, it says the jurisdictional right to respond and take action on BLM and U.S. Forest Service land for which the federal government claims only a proprietarial interest when conditions on such land adversely affect or pose a clear and imminent danger. Or, so the standard in this bill is adversely affect or clear and imminent danger. Now, jump over to jurisdictional right. Who does this apply to? All political subdivisions, this is on page 8, 23 through 25, means the ability of a state or political subdivision of the state as applicable to exercise lawful police powers over a given land area. Then you go to political subdivision just below that. County, city, okay, that sounds good, right? School district. A school district could say that's an adverse condition on public land, and I don't know, build a school, annex area for they need to school, annex an access for that school. Housing authority, a county housing authority. Maybe it's adversarial that they don't have enough money in a mountain town and enough land. They could go and have a housing development on Forest Service and BLM land. Now, I checked with the drafter on this. I'm not off base. This is what this bill reads. Finally, if you get to the bottom, it says, or public corporation organized pursuant to law. That includes economic development authorities and organizations. So if they think something is adverse on public land or on Forest Service and BLM land, this bill would give them the ability under state law to do some development if they think it's adverse. And that points to the problem with this bill. It's a lot broader than fire. It confuses things. All the comments people have been making about fire, Sheriff's Office they run the fire. The way that works, you show up, first person on the scene is the incident commander, and then they hand off successively to the sheriff's office. They respond to federal lands. That happens. But that's not the only thing in this bill. The whole declaration talks about that, but if you look at what's in the bill, if you look at the truth of what's in the bill, this isn't just fire. This is school districts, this is economic development organizations, this is housing authorities, this is flood control, this is drainage, irrigation, metro districts. It's a lot more than fire, and that's the problem with the bill. So I ask for a no vote.
Senator Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The bill does apply to those jurisdictions. The bill does specify that the county sheriff in this state has the authority in those emergencies, for instance, wildfire. And the example of a school district was brought up. Well, down in southwestern Douglas County, we have parts of our county communities that are in national forest or adjacent to it. And if we have a public school, part of the Douglas County School District, that is threatened by a wildfire, guess who has jurisdictional authority to save the kids and the teachers that are in the school, to save the school? It's our county sheriff. That's who has jurisdictional authority. And it seems that some would propose without this bill that it would be more expedient for the neighbor there of that school in southwestern Douglas County to pick up the phone and call the White House and ask for the president to intervene. Or maybe the Department of Agriculture that has oversight over the National Forest Service, or the Department of Interior that has jurisdiction over national parks. Or maybe there's a special 3-digit number that we can call up to get the National Firefighting Service to respond to save that school that's part of the school district in Douglas County. No, we're going to call our county sheriff. And it is somewhat odd, I was surprised when I learned this, that yes, the county sheriff becomes that sort of fire chief in charge. And it's unusual. Gosh, aren't our sheriffs there to protect people and arrest bank robbers and maybe give speeding tickets and do those sort of law enforcement activities? Yes, but in the case of a national emergency like a wildfire, it's the county sheriff who is in charge. And I appreciate the comments of the President Pro Tem. I agree with her. I too have been asked, well, what groups are you affiliated with? And I've not traveled to any of those meetings. I don't take direction from any of those groups. I support this bill because I live in a place called Douglas County, and we have a sheriff who has made it clear that this is his jurisdiction. And our county commissioners have made it clear that they understand that if, in the case of a wildfire, it is the sheriff who makes the call, not the county commissioners. They're there to help get the resources available. And yes, our school district, I would say even our school board would agree that if kids in a school are in danger of a wildfire, that they're not going to pick up the phone and call the federal government. They're going to turn to the elected county sheriff and trust him to make the decisions that will protect life and property in Douglas County. This is not a conspiracy, and this is not a land grab. I appreciate that comment as well. This is about jurisdictional authority during an emergency, and that rightly, under our current state statute, that rightly rests in the county sheriffs elected by the people of our 64 counties in Colorado. This is a good bill. Please vote yes.
Senator Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, let me try this again. This doesn't have to do with the schools that might be burnt from a fire. The bill says the jurisdictional right can come into effect when conditions of such land adversely affect. It doesn't have to do anything with the fire. That's what we've chosen to talk about. It could be a school district that thinks that the U.S. Forest Service land and BLM land adversely affects their ability to grow, and they annex some land for a school. Same for a housing authority. Or through an economic development organization, which is part of this subdivision list. It could be for development. Everybody wants to go back to the fire thing because it takes your attention off of what the bill reads and says and what the truth of the bill is. Like any debate up here, I think we throw out a lot of stuff that may be confusing, but I'm just reading the bill. And if the Forest Service and the BLM, they think it adversely affects a school district, a housing authority, an economic development authority, could take action. That's my point. This bill is confusing, and that's the last thing you want to do in these kinds of relations. Earlier, we passed a bill talking about good neighbor authority and working with people, partners to get things done. That's how we should do it. We shouldn't mess it up and make it more confusing, which I think that's what this bill does. I ask for no vote.
Senator Merrifield.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm getting confused by the debate because it sounds like we're addressing a bill that's been brought because there's concern that sheriffs do not have jurisdictional authority, and the fact of the matter is we all agree that they do. Nothing in this bill really concerns that. That's being done currently. The fires that were in El Paso County, the sheriff had jurisdictional authority, and it was not denied him when those terrible fires threatened people's lives and property. What concerns me, as the previous speaker said, we're only talking about wildfires, but there's nothing about wildfires in the title of the bill. It's talking about state police power jurisdiction on federally managed lands, and that's what concerns me, especially if you read page 8, lines 23. Jurisdictional right means the ability of the state or a political subdivision of the state as applicable to exercise its lawful police powers over a given land area. It doesn't say when there's a wildfire. It says always. So let's make sure we understand what we're debating here. We're not debating the rights of sheriffs to exercise their authority. Once again, I would urge you to oppose this bill.
Senator Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I would say that the meat of the bill is on page 9, and it's on lines 15 through 25. And that's where it states the state possesses, and you drop down to line 17, the right to respond to and take action on BLM lands and U.S. Forest Service lands for which the federal government claims only a proprietary. I think the focus of this bill is right on. I think the sponsor has been very clear about what the concern is, and unfortunately we have way too many experiences in the state of Colorado where this has been necessary. I urge an aye vote.
Any further discussion? Senator Merrifield.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to respond to my good colleague from the Durango area. I'm looking at those lines, and the ones that really, really concern me is where it says, the jurisdictional right to respond to and take action on BLM lands or USFS lands for which the federal government claims only a proprietorial interest when conditions, here's the part, on such lands adversely affect. What does that mean? Who's going to decide what adversely affect means? That could be so broadly interpreted that it just brings a fine point on why some of us are concerned with what direction this bill could be taking. Once again, please oppose.
Senator Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to be ultra clear, the previous speaker hit this one, but it says adversely affect or pose imminent, clear and imminent danger. Or, we know the difference between that and. The standard is adversely affect. They say, hey, this is adversely affecting us. We're annexing land into Forest Service property. We're not going to bother with an exchange, and we're going to build a school. This law says they can do that if they think it adversely affects. That's the problem with this bill. It's not just about fire, folks. It's not. It's about a lot more, and other witnesses have said that. And when you talk to the public about this kind of issue and say, hey, what if the state has more authority over federal lands? You typically get the response, don't mess with it, I love to recreate on it. It's one of the great things we have in America where I can have free access to go recreate. We had a witness in committee, an Iraq veteran, who came in and spoke about the healing powers of his ability to go on Forest Service and BLM land after he came back from Iraq as a sniper. He thinks it saved him. Probably has PTSD, I would assume. That is an American, I don't know what the word would be. It's an American ideal that was started back with Teddy Roosevelt. This access to public land and federal land, and the state could come in and have these local jurisdictions say what they wanted to do to all of our land, not theirs. And for that reason, I asked for a no vote. This bill's going to confuse. It's going to cause problems. And if we want to solve these things, let's do what we did in an earlier bill with the good neighbor policy. That's why I co-sponsored the bill. That's the way we should be doing things. So I asked for a no vote.
Any further discussion? Senator Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, there are, I think, some answers to the questions that came up here. I'd just like to cover a couple of them. The senator from Arapahoe County asked, well, gee, we have a stakeholder meeting in this. I'll tell you about our stakeholder meetings. I had a pass from Colorado Springs Falcon Division of our police department to go into the Waldo Canyon area and meet with my constituents as they were digging out from the ash and rubble of the Waldo Canyon fire. That's our stakeholder meeting. As I was there with volunteers from Samaritan's Purse, local churches, sifting through charred remains when one of my constituents found the baptism ring that his daughter had worn at her baptism, and that was the only surviving item that she had of her heritage. That was our constituent meeting. After the Waldo Canyon fire, I spent that entire interim going to every direction in that whole fire burn area, meeting with constituents. That's our constituent meeting, our stakeholder meeting. When we had the Black Forest fire, unfortunately in the following year, I spent that entire interim in stakeholder meetings saying, why did this happen? And this last weekend on Saturday, I met with a lot of my constituents. And folks, they're mad at us. They don't like officious bureaucrats talking about words in a bill. And I do find it a little bit offensive that when we pull a definition out of context. Yeah, take a look at the bill. Take a look at page 8 and 9, where we have a standard definitions of jurisdictional right, or a standard definition of political subdivision. We've got the bill drafter right over here. OLS does a great job in writing these bills. This isn't any kind of political agenda. They put in common language because it's used throughout the statutes, and that's their job, is to write these bills the correct way. and they do a good job at it. If anybody's blocking access to our federal lands, it's the Bureau of Land Management. I've had complaints because people cannot get in on Colorado roads, especially on the west slope, because those roads are now blocked by the Bureau of Land Management. And they probably have some reasons to do that. They're trying to keep, habitat and so forth for hunters, and that's good. But when people with handicaps or veterans that have been injured in combat or something can't get into those areas to enjoy the access to our public lands, we need to consider that as well. But members, when mistakes are made, when the forest burns, when houses are lost, when 356 families in Waldo Canyon and just as many in the Black Forest area have lost their homes, their property, and their lives in the two most expensive fires in Colorado history, the people are mad. They want us to do something about this. I didn't talk too much about Black Forest. I remember watching the smoke coming up in Black Forest like a nuclear bomb over the county as I was driving home one day from Denver. I said, what the heck is going on here? I drove up as close as I could, actually took some pictures, and it was really interesting. We had some local jurisdictional problems that this bill would clarify. Our county sheriff could see that fire. Everybody in the state could see the fire, except for those people in Black Forest, because the forest is so thick you could not see where the fire was. So our local fire chief in that jurisdiction said, well, we don't need any help from the county. The county is the single point of contact for the state. All emergency management, all firefighting, everything else in the state is run through our county sheriffs. That's the system we have in Colorado. They are the fire marshals for our state. They wanted to go in and intervene. And unfortunately, the local fire chief didn't understand the magnitude of the problem. We need to clarify these jurisdictions for our firefighters, for our county sheriffs, because they are the ones charged with our public safety. So I'd ask for an aye vote on Senate Bill 160.
Any further discussion? Senator Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to be clear. The words in bills matter. I think we all agree. And the reason a drafter is standing over there is that I asked to make sure my thinking was correct. And it is. This applies to a lot more than fire. I ask for a no vote.
Any further discussion on Senate Bill 160? Seeing none, the motion for the body is the adoption of Senate Bill 160. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no? No. The ayes have it, and Senate Bill 160 is adopted. Mr. Majors, would you please read the title of House Bill 1264?
House Bill 1264 by Representative Milton and Senator Johnston concerning prohibiting the use of a chokehold by a peace officer.
Senator Johnston.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1264, and I move the Judiciary Committee.
Do the Judiciary report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Judiciary Committee report made two minor amendments to the bill to clarify the language around the physical threat to an officer that would give them a reason to act in self-defense. And ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on the Judiciary report? Seeing none, the motion for the body is the adoption of the Judiciary report. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it, and the Judiciary report is adopted. To the bill, Senator Johnston.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm proud to bring this bill this morning, and I'm proud to have bipartisan support for it. This is, I know it's been a long morning, colleagues, but this is a bill to try to help protect people in Colorado, and this bans the practice of law enforcement officers using chokeholds in non-lethal situations. You've probably seen on the news stories from around the state as well as around the country. We certainly had one here in Colorado where we had an inmate that was detained in a chokehold in a nonviolent situation and died. You see the Eric Garner story in New York City, situations where we have the deployment of a chokehold where there is no real physical threat, and you have folks who lose their lives as a result. We're proud to have law enforcement who is supporting this, to say that there is no scenario in which a law enforcement officer should ever use a chokehold unless it is out of self-defense or unless it is to stop the physical assault of a police officer. And so it's an important step forward. Thanks for your support. I'd ask for an aye vote on House Bill 1264.
Any further discussion on House Bill 1264? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of House Bill 1264. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and House Bill 1264 is adopted. Senate Majority Shuffle, Leader Shuffle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move the committee rise and report.
Motion for the body is for the committee to rise and report. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion is adopted. Hey, Raleigh.
The Senate will come back to order. Senator Cook.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee has met and had a number of bills under consideration. Mr. Majors, would you please read the report?
March 30, 2016, Mr. President, the committee whole vacancy reports under consideration of the following types of bills being a second reading thereof makes following recommendations thereon. Senate Bill 160 passed on second reading, ordered into gross, placed on the counter for third reading and final passage. House Bill 1224 is amended. House Bill 1215. House Bill 1263 is amended. House Bill 1264 is amended. Passed on second reading, ordered revised to place on the counter for third reading and final passage.
Senator Cook.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of the report.
There is an amendment. Mr. Majors, would you please read Committee of the Whole Amendment 1 to
Committee of the Whole Amendment 1 to the House Bill 1224. Senator Woods moved to amend the Board of
Senator Woods.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Cow Amendment 001.
To the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, this is an amendment to the amendment we passed on second reading. There was a drafting error, just a typo, a comma in the wrong place. And so we are amending it to take off lines 1 and 2 on House Bill 1224 of the second reading amendment we passed today.
Is there further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of Committee of the Whole Amendment 1. Are there any no votes? With 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, Committee of the Whole Amendment 1 is adopted. The motion before the body is the adoption of the Committee of the Whole report. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, are there any no votes? With 35 ayes, 0 no, 0 absent, 0 excused, the report of the Committee of the Whole is adopted. Senate Bill 160 passed on second reading and ordered engrossed and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. House Bill 1224 is amended, House Bill 1215, House Bill 1263 is amended, House Bill 1264 as amended, passed on second reading and ordered revised and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. Announcements. Senator Ulibarri.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, this is a personal announcement. During the day of the snowstorm, I brought my black long jacket and hung it up over here on this side. I think someone may have confused it with their jacket because there's a black long jacket with a scarf and gloves in it that are not mine. So if you have my jacket, please return it.
What size?
Big.
Senator Newell, you're wearing a tent today? Black tent. Further announcements? Anything else from the Lost and Found? Mr. Majority Leader.
Kevin? Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, we are going to recess in order to keep the desk over. We've got some resolutions coming over that we need to get introduced. I know you all need to get to committee, so with that, Mr. President, I move the Senate recess to 1 p.m. this afternoon.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The Senate will be recessed until 1 p.m.